You good? Okay.
Said, we got jerseys, I can sell them to you. He's trying to sell them around the office.
All right.
And I'm like, okay.
Is that going to stay on now?
So,
All right.
what I found
I know,
out
but
is
everyone else will hear me. I'll just do this.
he took them off the back of the truck and was selling them in the office. He found a box on a truck and just.
Welcome. Let me hand you a data fabric playbook.
Okay.
Oh yeah, here you go. Here's the playbook. You mature every one of those components. You can integrate any data in the world. BIM, doesn't matter. So you couldn't find a better one to go to?
I didn't know what data fabric was.
Oh.
You'll find out.
I don't think the people I work with know what it is.
Some of us do.
You know, they keep coming up with new terms. So.
Yeah? So I've kind of taken the term and morphed it into my own definition.
Okay.
So, because I couldn't find another term. You'll probably come up with a new term. Why didn't you call it the?
I just borrow definitions.
What is that?
I just borrow definitions that other
Do ya?
people are defining.
Well, that's what I do. And I thought, I heard the term and I kind of looked up the definition of it. I'm like, yeah, but that kind of can mean something else, like a fabric, like a woven thing, right? And
Well, I'm curious, like, maybe you'll touch on it. Like, what is the difference between governance, data governance, that demo would sound?
oh, I'm not getting that deep.
Okay.
I'm at the 100,000-foot view of this stuff because everyone's different and people need help in these different areas, some more than others. And so I don't want to define, I'm not getting that deep.
But isn't data governance, like, looks back at the enterprise level, organization level, different facets of the culture, of
Yep.
how data moves around? I think the only thing that's really missing is the cultural aspect.
Of the governance?
Yeah.
Well, there is.
No, but then what's the difference between your understanding of the data fabric and data governance?
Because there's other components to this.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Software, culture, I guess you'll see some of that. And at the
Yeah.
end, I'd really like your critique on if it makes sense, because I've been tweaking this for a while. And so, oh, more suckers. Come on in. Take a playbook here. Here's a playbook for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm the moderator, so. Oh, are you? Yeah, that's good.
All right, take a playbook.
There's my purple badge. And there's my purple moderator badge, so. That was in the back.
See if anyone else coming in.
Oh, Eric's doing all the talking, and I'm just. I don't know if I can listen to him, though. He's a Swiftie.
Who's that?
That KC jersey you got on. I don't
I'm
know.
gonna give you a little.
I was dressed up. I was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to go.
Hey, I was a KC fan before that all even happened. So
This is a jeans and polo conference, for sure.
Absolutely.
I know, and I didn't bring any jeans. I just brought dress pants. I got some shorts and other
I have
stuff.
a pair of dress pants, but I'm not ready.
I mean, it can be a slacks, a
Yeah.
shirt and tie conference if you want. It can be jeans and t-shirt, I think is pushing it for business, but as soon as 5
Oh,
o'clock goes on.
what time is it?
Jeans and t-shirts, just shorts and t-shirts, just fine. We're all friends here.
We're all friends, that's right. Hey, good to see you. You can have a playbook. You stay or not, you can have a playbook.
Thank you.
So,
Taylor Swift will show up to this, because you got that jersey.
see, now what was there? Maybe you'll see some Taylor Swift references in the presentation. And anyone, if you do see them, you can identify them. Just yell it out. Yep, hey, thanks a lot. Okay, we got it, thanks. Everyone hear me okay? All 6 of you? I could almost take this off and we can just, who wants to be in charge of handing out the playbooks?
I can do that for you.
All right. Yeah, it's a moderator job. Make them work today. Thanks for coming. All right, let's talk about implementing data fabric framework. I was going to say playbook. Let's talk about our agenda here today. All right, what is a data fabric framework? And then we're going to touch on linear referencing systems because I believe that's going to be really critical for how data is going to interchange in the transportation network with models and other things. Talk about maturity. We're going to then talk about the stuff that's in the playbook. Those other 2 don't. And then we're going to talk about this great merge. Could be Taylor Swift and Kelsey, we don't know, right? And then we'll close this thing out. And this is a framework, so think about how it relates to your organization, right? This is going to be a 100,000-foot view of things, and so kind of think about your organization, as I touch on some of these points, how you feel about your organization when I touch on these points. So, all right. Maturity of data analytics and capabilities, right? So a lot of times in DOTs, they deal with like raw data, they come up here and they get to ad hoc reporting, and that's about all they can do because the way their data is integrated, the way you got silos of excellence, you got systems that are silos that are excellent what they do, but they don't, cross-reference each other. Part of implementing a data fabric, we're going to talk about here, is getting past this so you can start getting to the predictive analytics, things like that. So you want your systems to be able to integrate and talk out there. So why the football thing is going on is I'm tying the data fabric framework to football. So those that are football fans will be like, that's awesome, I can remember pieces out of this. Those that don't know anything about football may find this kind of boring, but we'll be okay there. So what is a data fabric? It's like your game plans. This is the game plan for your organization, right? It's really a set of data services, concepts, integration processes which provide predictable, reliable, authoritative capability across a choice of endpoints in your organization, spanning on-prem and cloud environments, which generally means you can have multiple authoritative data stores out there, right? To have your data so they can be visualized, things like that. But you also need a whole bunch of other pillars in your organization for this fabric, this game plan to be successful. It's like any football, right? You got to have the right players, the right coaches, the right owners, the right plays, all that stuff. So look at this as like that, right? Everyone with me so far? Who doesn't like football, I should probably ask. You can raise your hand if you don't. All right, our close-knit group here, just a few of us. All right. So what is this? Each component is like something that makes up your team, right? So it's a framework. So I'm not going to tell you how you're going to do something. I'm giving you a framework of ideas of how you can improve your organization. Hey, welcome. You a Chiefs fan?
Am I a Chiefs fan? No.
Okay, that's okay. All right. You can sit up front then. All right. You didn't know a comedy show was going on, did you? It's a framework. It's also inclusive, right? It's inclusive to your existing systems. It's not replacing systems. It's looking at the systems you have and how you can leverage those in your environment, right, and exploit those. It advances data maturity, things like that. It's flexible, so it's nimble. It's not tying you into any software platforms, things like that. You're leveraging what you have. And really, it's customized for you, by you. It's something that you have to look at your own organization and determine what to do with. What if I told you none of it was accidental? No one says anything. That was a Taylor Swift reference. You all missed it back there. All right. And this is a diagram of how we kind of look at DOTs in general. By the way, I was at Iowa DOT for about 30 years. I've been with Geodecisions about 15. So I've been within all the components of the DOT. So I started in road design and Iowa DOT, spent 5 years there, went to IT, managed an IT group, dealing with CAD, dealing with GIS. And the last 15 years, Iowa DOT as a GIO, the Geographic Information Officer. So this fabric really kind of shows up, takes all the stuff to be kind of learned, and then put it together. So DOT is generally broken on the enterprise capabilities, planning and programming, design, which most people here are dealing with design, build, implement, and operations and maintenance. A lot of times these little verticals at DOTs, they have different systems that grow up differently and they don't necessarily interact with each other. All right, let's talk about LRS. Who knows what LRS is? Should I call on you to ask you to define it? No, that's okay. So LRS actually covers and integrates with all components of this data fabric. Right? So that's me at a Browns game. So if anyone likes the Browns, there you go. It's like, so an LRS is like that football field, right? You have distances from across the field and yard markers. And so as the ball is moving, it's being located along there. So it's very similar to what an LRS is doing for you. So it's really a set of methods and procedures for specifying location, distance, or offset along a linear feature. So we're dealing with roads here from a point known location. So if I have a route that starts here, goes to here, and it's 100 miles long, I can measure along that route and locate it. A lot of people think that an LRS also stores data. An LRS actually doesn't store data. It just transforms locations and allows you to locate along the network. And with that, you get linear referencing methods. So I'm just giving you the 101 in LRS. So we have LRS, linear referencing system. It works with linear referencing methods. So you collect data along the route in different methods. Mile point, which is the distance from the beginning of a route, let's say, along. Reference post, which a lot of people call mile post. Some states don't have those. I think Florida doesn't have them. A few other don't use that. Coordinate route. I'm standing here, and this location is tied to a route. Literal description, addressing, which everyone has a house or a location they live at, and then the engineer's favorite, stationing, right? That's the distance along. We good here with LRMs? Okay. And LRS transformation. So the reason why you have an LRS in an organization is what happens is data gets collected using this LRM. Let's say that was coordinate route, but somebody else, another system's collecting it with a reference post or a station. How does that data show it's in those same spots across these different linear referencing methods? And so traditionally what happens is you write a bunch of code to say this system needs to talk to this system, so it's going to transform this stuff. Inefficient. So as more and more systems come across and more programs go into place, you have to build more and more code transformations. So really what an LRS does is allows you to collect data with an LRM, send it to the LRS, it knows which LRMs are supported, and then can return the other LRM. So I can collect something with mile point and get it back in stationing. Simple. I'm from Iowa, by the way, so we deal with simple. Corn, beans, pigs, stuff like that. All right. LRS supports all business partners. So let's say an LRS could support emergency management, like in this case. Something happens on the road right here. This is known as reference post 86.4 on US 69. It's also known as 300 feet north of the intersection of Cleveland Avenue and US 69 on 69. That would be useful to 911 dispatch. So DOT's LRS systems are actually important to places outside. So is this okay for everyone? Are we good? Yeah, everyone's like, oh, wow, okay. And then with an LRS, you get dynamic segmentation. We're almost done with LRS stuff. What dynamic segmentation does is it takes your center line, you can divide it up and break it up into dynamic parts based on attributes. So let's say it's pavement type. You can break that same center line up by pavement type. Also by paint markings, that type of thing. We good on that? You kind of see how it makes a segment here based on speed limit, another segment, and its paint conditions are different. Well, the reason why you want to do that is what they call linear overlay. I want to know, because our analysis says where the pavement condition is poor, speed limit is greater than 35, number of lanes is less than 4, and ADT is greater than 12,000, there are problems with crashes or something. What an LRS allows you to do is do linear overlay of those items and return the areas on your network that meet your criteria. Eventually, BIM models and other things are going to fall into this, right? The things you're doing. Where do I put a certain type of subdrain from a certain manufacturer or things like that, right? So you want to know where those are along the network. So that's a linear. So we have LRS uses LRMs to locate, and then you go ahead and do dynamic segmentation linear overlay. All right. Now here's just a really kind of cheesy example I put together. And I'll just point out the one. So you make an application for the public, they come out and they say, oh, there's this alligator on reference post 14 out there in the field, right? Because they can see the green post, so they report it. But on the next screen here, this is your traffic management center. Oh, well, our traffic management system uses mile point. Well, the problem a lot of times is those who don't talk, but with the LRS in between, the system can collect it, transform it with the LRS, send it to your traffic ops center in the appropriate LRM that they need. So it can be visualized and things like that. So, and this slide deck is available, I think, for download off the app and stuff. So, all right, last one before we get in the data fabric framework, the details of it, maturity. Yeah. So maturity, this is just, here's my brother in 7th grade back in like, I don't know if that was probably their 80s sometime, right? So they're maturing, right? You got these junior high football players, right? Then you have people like me officiating a freshman game, right? And so I'm maturing, right? I can't do varsity till you really get things under your belt, right? And then, of course, I don't know if any Utah fans in here, I was hoping, but I guess not. So welcome to the Big 12. But include a picture I took of the Utah players. So maturity. I'm a big fan of doing maturity assessments. So I'm going to do a pitch here for Slim Jim. Now, Slim Jim is a GIS maturity assessment, but a lot of times organizations will do a really in-depth maturity assessment to see where they're strong and weak. I believe you should really start with something that's simple. And you can take something like the Slim Jim, slimjim.info, and you can take a look at the format, download the spreadsheet, 50 questions, and you can modify those questions to kind of understand maybe your vertical and your maturity. So go ahead and think about this, So go and find a maturity model that's simple, that's something you could fill out, and take a look at. So, and what I did at Iowa DOT was I did a history. I went back and I said, okay, since I've been doing this for 15 years, at the very beginning, where did I believe we were? And then how have we grown over time? Right? To kind of understand where your strengths and weaknesses are out there in your program that you're running or things like that. So it's very important to be mature. And this is just showing how at GeoDecisions we've taken the Slim Jim assessment and we've actually in the spreadsheet added the verticals that you're seeing in your playbook that we handed out. So then you can score each of the pillars of the playbook, right? And you can see your maturity for certain things. So I'm happy to send this to you. If you want to email me, you can download it, and then I can send you the one that has this. You can change it around and do what you need to do, right? So like this, it gives you a score. Visualization, you're only scoring a 2.4. Culture, 2.7, right? So it kind of helps you gauge where you need to put some resourcing. So that's maturity. And that's really what we're trying to do with the playbook, because you want to mature those components in that fabric there. Yes?
Before you leave the linear reference system,
Yeah.
one of the challenges, and you're talking about the maturity, for years and years, the linear reference system was the basis for how we rotated things along our route.
Mm-hmm.
Now with geospatial, I think that the geospatial needs to be the foundation, and a linear reference system can be natural.
Yes, it sure can be. They complement each other, but
It's always been inherent. One guy will have out with a wheel and the base starts here, and then a different guy goes out there and there's a different linear reference.
yeah. So we can talk about that one toward the end. Hold on to that question. So, because I have 110 slides.
Okay.
No, I have 80 slides actually. So, but you hold on to that because that's a really good discussion. We can't get it in a group. We can talk one-on-one. So, all right. So now we're going to the web services. So, because we all like sharing CSV files between systems, right? That's what I'm saying here this week, and this is my first IHEEP, and it's been pretty amazing to talk about how things are going to integrate and with each other. It reminds me of the days back we used to share CSV files, and people still do, right? So that's my granddaughter. She's 2 now, though, but they live here in Salt Lake, so that's where I'm going tomorrow. But it's like that football, right? You're going to pass that ball. That's like a web service, right? You're going from one system, the quarterback, to a receiver. Sometimes it may get intercepted by a defense, right? Things like that. But that's what these web services are, right? Web services are really where things are at. Direct database connections to your systems, I think, for the most part, I believe are a thing of the past. They still may be necessary, but you really want to look at, how you can generate web services. And the beauty is, get some feedback, most DOTs have a web service ecosystem in their Esri environment. But they may not be tapped or leveraged across the enterprise appropriately because, people think you got to put it in the GIS, right? So, So GIS is a great integrator of data, so you can use the REST service interfaces of that to really start to integrate data and stuff. So you can take existing systems that are kind of locked down and you have to use a database connection, but maybe you can link those REST services in there with your Esri stack, right? Eventually, models that are going to be created are going to be indexed and used in the GIS environment, tied back to the LRS, those types of things, right? And using model and information using web services. You see that with like Bentley stuff, with ACC and Autodesk, those types of things, really getting into the web services and APIs. Add as part of your R. I guess I moved that around when I was changing this. So, and the last thing is open data. When you're using web services, it's really important to open up that data that you have. So there's two types of open data, in my opinion. There's stuff that goes outside your organization, but there's also open data to inside your organization, right? Why do you make things private or not private, right? So it's something to think about. Opening your data a lot of times opens up a lot of possibilities in your organization. Here's an example of something we proposed to Arkansas DOT. We didn't end up getting the job, but this kind of shows you what we proposed. They wanted to take all these systems and didn't talk to each other and then move them into some type of Esri data store or data store and then use web services to bring it all together, right? They went a little different direction, but this is an example of an architecture. In this case, it's using FME, which is an ETL tool. I've heard it talked about in a few different sessions I've been in. So they're using FME to kind of pull data from these systems, move it over here, use the REST services then to make that data available to everyone else. So that's just an example. Good? All right, data standards. You're probably not going to like what I have to say about this. Analysis paralysis. Look at these data standards here. Iowa DOT, 1988, 25th of October, how you're going to name your files. I started the DOT in 1990, right? Here's a program specification that talks about how you're going to put bits of information on a microstation element in April of 1998. Standards. That way you can do things with it, right? A play. Standards. You have people that, you have a fullback, a quarterback, halfback, this old wishbone that people don't know that. I still wish people would bring that back. You have standards. Which hole are you going to run through, right? Standards. Football has a standard. Right? You set up your offense, you set up your defense. People are going to remember this one, right? I hope. Data standards are key to integration. I think we heard that. I was in a workshop a little bit right before lunch with the model, and we got the papers out, and we kind of ran through things. That was all standards. One of the big things that came out of that, right? Reduces time and effort. People complain, it takes so long to do it. But do you really realize how much time it takes you if you don't do it, right? Helps build standards to enforce data interchanges, need predictable, reliable, authoritative data. Sound familiar with data fabric? But don't fall into analysis paralysis. I've seen too many DOTs take years to try to get down to the minutia of their data, right? And slows things up. Don't be the label maker. The reason why I put this in here, when I first started road design, we used to have to, you're starting to smile. We used to have to send all of our text back to a group that would print out things, and we have to stick them on the Mylar plan sheets. I couldn't do it myself. It'd be so much faster, right? So don't let standards delay you. This is my O'Brien County. This kind of represents the O'Brien County. Is there apostrophe or not? All the systems are storing O'Brien County differently within your organization, right? Standardize the important things out there. Software, right? Let's talk about software. It's equipment. Software is equipment. You need to get the job done. So I took these pictures at the NFL Hall of Fame or whatever, or not NFL, Professional Football Hall of Fame. So, you know, you got gloves, one of Iowa State's greatest, Ellis Hobbs, Lamar Jackson there. So remember, software is the equipment to get the job done, right? Like in football. When you deal with software, you really want to look at your configure first strategy. Look for software that allows you to configure it instead of writing from scratch, right? So configurable software. If the configurable software that's out there doesn't work for you, there's also things that can extend it. So if I look at the Esri world, you got configurable apps. Well, we may have to make a custom app that lives on top of that platform. So you're only customizing it a little bit, right? And then there's really the full customized APIs, things like that. That's where That's for true customization. And this used to be flipped in the DOT world. When I first started, everything was customized because it wasn't out there. Now it's trending a lot more toward, well, it is at the configurable apps and so on and so forth. So configure first, right? Anyone want to take a guess why I put this here? You got to upgrade your software. Don't get sacked like this person, right? Don't get sacked, right? I mean, remember that standard I showed you about adding elements to MicroStation back in 1998, a few slides back? Here's what that looked like. So we could query stuff from the database, display it in MicroStation. We wrote that. Imagine if you're still in MicroStation J. Anyone remember that? Imagine. Or who in their organization still uses this? Anyone? No one? Mainframe? So anyway, upgrade your software, right? So when you deal with software, look at maturity, right? Look at the maturity. Look at what you have. See if you're leveraging to the fullest. You know, I hear a lot of DOTs sometimes like, oh, we don't like Oracle, it's too slow. Well, why do Fortune 500 companies use Oracle? Maybe it's just the way you're implementing it. Maybe you don't have the right maturity in your training and stuff like that. Keep your software updated. Have licensing available. How many times do people struggle to buy a $1,000 piece of software that could potentially save them $10,000 of effort? Because you have a bureaucratic process, right? There you go. Whenever you can buy software, try to get concurrent licensing so it's not node locked to a single individual, right? So it can be sometimes a little more expensive to procure, but look at it that way. This is always controversial when I talk to DOTs about this. Invest in the future. Buy potential software you may use and drop it if you don't use it. That was a strategy used at Iowa when I talked to Esri or Vertigis. We would tack on some other things at a more of a minimal cost because we think we're going to use it over the next 3 to 5 years. And if we don't end up using it, okay, we drop it, we're done, right? But if we do end up using it because all of a sudden we're going to save a bunch of time, it's the greatest thing ever. So think about that, right? And as I mentioned, software licensing, right? Just make sure you got the software you need. Don't be this hard disk for 10 meg for $3,398. Can you imagine spending that for 10 meg of data? All right. Security. Help the quarterback. So the ball needs to get where it needs to be, right? Got to protect that quarterback. The picture I took in an Iowa State game, the lineman here protecting the quarterback there, right? Not going to get through there. So, simplify your security if you can, right? Leverage your enterprise security if you have it, right? Don't make people have different usernames and passwords. The last thing you want is to log into System A with your Windows username and password, and you have to go to System B that has a completely different username and password, and System C that doesn't. So try to avoid that. Work with a security group, right? Work toward a single sign-on for your applications, right? Use that same Windows credential or whatever you're using, right? And then use open data to simplify your data hoops. Really what that means is, if you don't need to lock down your data, some of the data you're using, make it available through REST services and stuff so your people internal and external can grab it and use it. That's all I'm going to talk about security, right? Culture. I want to be your A team. No Taylor Swift fans in here? Okay, all right. I thought in the back row you guys were going to identify the Taylor Swift stuff. No. All right. Culture, right? Culture. Here's me tailgating in a Kansas State game. Here's some high school coaches. Here's my son standing next to Coach McFarland, who I think he went to Florida State as a defensive coordinator for a while. But culture, right? What's the culture you breed there? How are you going to be a Super Bowl champion? I took that at Green Bay a few months ago when I was up there, right? So first thing you got to do is in your organization, Nate's going to kill me for this, there is no such thing as GIS. No such thing, even though I'm a GIS professional, right? It means too many things to too many people, and it confuses everybody. But you notice at the top, I say CAD. What is CAD, really? Is that starting to blur, right? GIS is more than maps. It's not GIS data. All GIS is numbers, text, geometry. That's it. It's not anything special. It just has a geometry component, right? So, changed my mind. culture. Communicate no GIS in your organization, right? You can use GIS for lots of other things, right? Reject it as a standalone technology. Embed it in your ecosystem. It's a friend. It's an integrator, right? So exposes data for spatial analysis, storytelling. This is something my team put together at Iowa. It's like, hey, we need to figure out what to put a new driver's license station in Des Moines. Oh, let's use visual analysis, right? Grab the data we have. Oh, we want to see wait times at a driver's license station. Oh, let's make a map and let's pull the Qmatic data and let's put it on a dashboard. Who would have thought of using GIS? A lot of places were just like, we got to go buy a piece of software. Leverage the software you have, right? And as it said in 2006, you're going to hear some Ericisms today. I had my CIO back in 2006 say, Eric, the systems that have geometry, you will manage, because we had infighting with geometry in the DOT at that time. And I said, well, you might as well give me everything. Because everything you do at a DOT is related to some type of location. Everything, period. And even the models today, it's all about location, right? Where things are at and so on. Elevate people within your organization. Make sure people are in the right place in the org chart. A lot of times, people, they need to get stuff done are buried too deep within the organization, right? So somehow you got to figure out how to get those people elevated within the organization, help them make decisions. You know, last thing you want to do is, you know, like with these linemen or things like that, people got to be in the right place, right? You've seen people in football make the dumbest calls you think, and it's like, what kind of lineup is that, right? Never works, right? Except if you're Mahomes, right? So, oh, Nate liked that picture. Touchdown Penn State. Move the big rocks and navigate the small ones, right? Decision makers need to move the big obstacles for you. Others navigate the small obstacles, right? And as Dylan McKay said in 90210, may the bridges I burn, oh, you're like, oh no, I knew I'd get one for you. May the bridges I burn light the way, right? Move those things out of the way, right? I said that at the DOT in a meeting once when I worked there, and they like, that's really negative, Eric. And I says, why? Because I'm lighting things up so I can show you which way to go or which way not to go, right? So Dylan McKay, you can write that one down. All right. Talk about the great merge, CAD GIS. Who thinks CAD GIS merge is coming? I was sensing that when going to these presentations today, right? CAD's flexible, details, right? As with surveyors, like used to say, GIS, get it surveyed, right? That's what they call it. Geographic area schematics used to manage, collect data, right? But the inflection point on traditional GIS web mapping and engineering technologies is here. A viewer in MicroStation, a web viewer in MicroStation, looking at a model, what's the difference between looking at data on a map? They're both spatial. And now, do you want the competing technologies now of what is a web map in your organization, right? So you got to start looking at that. You know, what is web mapping? Competing web map efforts. Oh, and on this, when I was at a keynote at Kansas DOT last year for GIS Day, and I said to them that you just need to merge your CAD support and GIS support groups. Because eventually they're going to all work together, and they need to work together. Just a couple slides. If you download this, you get the thing. The integration of CAD, BIM and GIS, this is from Geospatial World, talking about the difference. I'm not going to go over this. I just want you to know that people are talking about this out there. Here's another one about GIS and BIM interoperability, right? That if you start really interoping these things, time saved, stuff like that. So a lot of people these are things you don't see, right? And you're wondering why you're doing this. You know, you're getting your time saved and things like that. So again, download the presentation off the app and you'll get it. Oh, and I've learned so much about models here. What is a model? Geometry plus data, right? Anyone agree with me? Makes a model? Is that right? I'm looking for yeses or nos. No one wants to sucker it? Okay. But then you can use it for these BIM applications. Do you know what GIS is? Geometry plus data. No one's like, all right. And here's an example. This is, I think this is MicroStation down here, right? So you got a design, right? And let's turn it into a model. So this up here is an IFC model that gets exported from here to IFC. This is an ACC viewer. Let's put some issues on it, right? But this is Esri's product with the same model. Data interchange, data integration, right? Really important. So I know there's nuances to all this. I mean, this is a 100,000-foot view, but this is how these things all need to work together, so in your organization. All right. We doing okay, everyone? Everyone's looking at their clock. Yeah, how much time's left? Okay, all right, I got 30 minutes. Bridging the gap, I'm not going to jump into this too much, but I already talked about CAD, GIS integration. Augmented reality will be here really soon and commonplace, so you got to be ready for that type of thing. You got to coordinate with each other in your organization, right? CAD and GIS support working together, right? Cats and dogs living together. I mean, look at me with Mr. Kansas State here. Probably should have taken that beer out. Don't look at that. Me getting arrested on Kansas State's field, right? That type of thing, right? We all have to live together, right, out there. All college mascots, all skiing together. So they're all working together for a common goal. There's my son's right there. That's why I put that picture in. So Big 12 and some little guy. I don't know what's going on there. Oh, wait, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. So I forgot I put that in there last night. So there you go. We all got to work together. And these are themes I kind of see. Like even today, I look at some of the states where people are really coordinated, working together. I think the guy from Utah, or somebody from Utah yesterday or Monday on the keynote, were kind of talking about how they're all in alignment and how they can get a whole bunch of things done, which is really awesome to hear. And sat through a Montana one yesterday, and they were kind of talking the same thing. They had 56 people working on moving over to Autodesk, and it was like, wow, they got that done that time, right? Working together. Look at your people policy and procedures in your organization. Yes?
Nothing, we were just saying 56 people at the work Autodesk. It's easier to stay where you are, isn't it?
Well, we can talk. I can give you you need to get the full details on that.
Yeah.
I have it in my notes. All right. Look at your people policy and procedures in your organization. Like this one from this Department of Transportation said, the department shall incorporate spatial data into department business practices, database, and enterprise systems in a manner that will allow for integration and information sharing. That's a good little policy statement to have as an organization, right? The projections, coordinate systems, and linear referencing methods listed below will be utilized. So you basically codified, and look, linear referencing methods used by the department: coordinate route, reference post, biopoint, literal description, datum reference, and stationing. It's in their policies, right? Working together. Here's another one about data storage and maintenance, right? GIS software used by the department to view and edit spatial data shall be capable of making direct connections to enterprise databases or comply with a department-approved geospatial web services. That policy right there, that came from Iowa, by the way. Put that in, made that. That policy got rid of the infighting of being able to hook to databases because you have to go through all these hoops. But once you put a policy like this in the place, you don't have to. Spatial data. So look at your policies, procedures, right, that are out there. Open data, I touched on that, right? When you have open services, everything's easy. Leverage your Esri tools. We already talked about that. And create a policy. Oh, create a policy that all data is public unless you can deem it confidential. Do you know how much time that saves an organization to stop the fighting and like what should be public? Just make everything a web service unless it's confidential or has PII in it, right? For DOTs, there's a lot of stuff that we just think we need to hide. And it takes more time to hide it than just to open it up and make it available. Because what I found is nobody looks at it anyway. So just think about these things. Now, these things aren't right for everybody. I'm just giving a whole slew of things out here, right? Invest in the new. We already talked about software. Make sure you invest in the new, right? Here's how video log is collected, right? This is how video log was collected. This is from Iowa DOT. There's a guy standing up here with a camera doing a video log. No, this is true. This is like 1960, and my dad was an engineer for Iowa DOT. And I could see him jerry-rigging something like this and up there, and there's another camera up here. So imagine going down the road being that person up there, right? So I'm saying that's how you used to do video log, right? So it's pretty amazing. So, all right, data collection. You got to know the other team. You got to do your analysis on the other team, right? I ran the scoreboard for Iowa State football for 25 years. So set up the press box. This is a Division I COVID football game. Notice the clock operators are having to sit down below with their masks on. I'm sitting the next row up. But yeah, that's what a Division I football game looked like during COVID, just so you know. But look, they're using a linear referencing system for the ball. Isn't that great? All right. So data comes in lots of different ways. I didn't have model up here. I should have had model up here, but you collect data with open data, remote sensing, web services, all types of stuff is where data comes in, right? And with that, you want to use your configure first concept we talked about with your software. So if you're going to collect data, look at the ecosystem you have. One of those Esri tools or other things out of the box may meet your needs, right? So have your data standards, existing systems, make sure you're using APIs, transform data to and fro using your linear referencing methods, right? All that type of thing. So keep going here. Visualization reporting, your game analytics, right? I have this weird thing where when I get by a stadium, I like to go take a picture by it or in it, right? That's just weird. So I'm just giving you a visualization. I don't know if people can know what these are, but we'll take a little time out. Louisville, anyone Louisville fan? No? Toledo. Oh, wait, who said that? None, all right. I was at a game, we lost. I went to Heckle, yeah, okay. Ohio State, oh, sorry, you got to put your hand on your heart when you say that, the Ohio State University. Memphis, right? West Virginia, Mountaineers. Sister stadium to Iowa State, by the way. Me in front of Florida State. I was up in Green Bay. Oh, this is a Kansas home football game. Nobody's there. And Horned Frogs, right? So now we've taken a break on football stadiums. So visualization reporting, that's really where most people interface with the information you're giving them, right? You want to give them a easy way to do it, right? So you want to build those front-end interfaces, right? Trend is smaller and easier visualization. So here's a technical term, layeria, right? Avoid layeria in the items you put out, right? How many times have you used this is why GIS gets a bad name. How many times have you used a GIS environment where there's 50 things turned on and you can't see anything? Has anyone, okay, you're like, yeah, I've been there, right? That's layeria, right? So really get that with these configurable tools now, you don't need that, right? You can build these one-off things. Empower staff to create, different things, use your federated logging, be ready for augmented reality, and you want to have easy-to-use model viewers, right? I see there's pretty cool model viewers the industry's putting out there to look at your models and things like that, right? So you want to have the right visualization reporting tools out there. Touch on degrees of immersion real quick. Let me look at my time. All right, we got like 8 minutes and we'll probably be done. Degrees of immersion. Just want to touch on this. No immersion, right? There's no evidence of the physical world out there, right? That's kind of where we're at now. Partial immersion. This is where you're starting to do immersing people into a 3D view, stuff like that, right? And eventually you're going to get the total immersion. About a year ago, I thought industry was going to get completely to this, right? Everyone's going to just walk around with goggles on and stuff like that eventually. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. We'll find out. But with that, there's lots of different tools out there from Trimble, Autodesk, Bentley, Esri. I just put a couple up here. Like VGIS is one of my favorite ones, right? So somebody would have designed these things and they could just use their Esri REST services again, open the app, hooks to the REST services. Now they can instantly visualize everything underground from the 3D REST services. Now imagine if you built that in a model, brought it through your process, ended up back in your asset management system, turned it into a GIS REST service, and then maintenance operators in the field can look at it. That's that whole data life cycle, right? So these are just a couple little things about visualization. I'm not going to touch on these because everyone's looking bored. Master data management, the coach, right? So what is master data management? It's really where data is authoritatively stored within your organization. Is really how that's a simple way to put it, right? Choice of endpoints across a choice of endpoints. So this is like where you're collecting your data over here, right? And this is your master data management environment here. So a lot of times data is pulled from here, comes through some type of standard processing environment, right? Could be FME, could be stuff you've written. And then a lot of times it gets cleaned, and looks for duplicated stuff like that. But a lot of times what DTs forget about is the spatial LRS enablement of a data warehouse or master data management environment. A lot of times they just stick data and they forget that we need to have geometry or location put with that. So it's also important to tack that on to your standard process. And then it gets stored in here. And then from here you use your web services, other stuff to deal with data mining, visualization reporting, relation building, business intelligence tools, all that good stuff. This kind of makes sense? I mean, it's pretty old hat for most everybody, but, all right. And in closing, and I didn't put a placeholder. Does anyone have a Taylor Swift quote? No, I'm just joking. I know you do. Conspiracy theory. No. All right, so let's kind of touch on the GIS data fabric framework, right? As we talked about, it's a framework. Everyone's going to be a little different, but all DOTs have these pillars in their organization. Some are going to be more mature than others. Seek out the ones that are more mature than you and find out how they're buying their software better, or they have their security protocols, things like that, right? And the data fabric, what with football, like we talked about. Think about the pillars that are in here, and look at this. You may need a new coach, right, to win. You may need a different type of playbook. You may need a different quarterback, right? So that's what that maturity of these different pillars and different components of the data fabric really look at, right? Look at it as a football team. How do you win that Super Bowl trophy out there? And with that, you do have the playbook with you, those that came in. You got a copy of the playbook, right? So go ahead and take a look at that and see, and hit me up with any questions that you have. And my last slide here. And what I want to say is I hope that you actually learned something, right? Whenever I go to a game, I do like 30, 40 games a year, used to. And every time I go to a game, I send a picture of my wife of me doing this, whether in a locker room or my car or something, and she got so mad at me. But it was okay. So anyway, I hope you learned something. Feel free to email me. I'm around through tomorrow. I love to brainstorm this stuff. So you get any questions like how you're doing things and things like that, hit myself up. Nate's here from GeoDecisions also. Any of us can, brainstorm this stuff. Or even hit me up in the email and say, hey, Eric, can you talk next week or the week after? Love to hear your problems, hear your successes, that type of thing. And with that, I think that we've gone through almost 80 slides in 40 minutes. Okay, are there any questions besides this one? No? Okay, whatever. And if you feel, you got one? Okay, and if you don't feel like you have to sit here through question and answer, if you want to get up, I won't be offended. So go ahead, and what was your question again?
My question we seem to be transitioning from, in the linear reference system, because for so long the linear reference system was the basis for how we position things in our corridors for recording and everything else. But as
Yep.
we move to autonomous this and all the electronics that we have, then it tends to be becoming more and more prevalent that we move the basis for the linear reference system should be geospatial, and so that it relates to everything else that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then treat it as another element of that, rather than it be the basis for what we locate.
LRS should be the basis of the network that you're locating to. And maybe I'm not going to answer your question right. So it's your network that you locate to. So it's your center lines, and your attributes that align to it. And the data that ties against it, what the LRS does is it produces a geometry back to you that you can store in your systems. And not only you want to store this geometry, but you also want to store your linear referencing method in those systems out there. So that's your kind of electronic tie back to the LRS if you don't use the geometry. Did that even answer your question?
Well, I'm not really sure. As we move forward, more and more, everything has a positional accuracy.
Right?
Right now, it's very hard to determine positional accuracy from a linear reference system.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
For example, in Florida, they used UTM as the coordinate system for our linear reference system. Well, the panhandle of Florida is in a different UTM projection. They didn't want to go to a new projection, so they keep projecting it in UTM 17 all the way out.
Okay, projection is different than a linear referencing system.
Well, the linear referencing system, though, the problem that we have is it fluctuates because people start in different places. We talked about maybe establishing this is 0, 0 at this intersection, and we locate that and we stay with that, because right now it depends on who's running the wheel.
Okay, you're from Florida? Here's me in the car in Florida with your Ames system. Okay, I don't know if that looked familiar to you when, yeah, I'll make this one a little bit bigger. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because one of the observations I had when I was on site in Florida, okay, here it is, yeah, right there. The same thing, they roll down the window, they look for that paint mark on the side, right? And they start here and they use the plan, right? And then go down and check things, and then you use the DMI. So I don't know if I consider that a true linear referencing system. It is a referencing system, but like you said, there are mistakes in the ground, right? Or subjective, plus or minus a few feet, sometimes meters, whatever, right? So.
Well, you won't hurt my feelings. I'm not in that group, but I have to deal with that in a lot of things that I
Yeah.
do, and it becomes challenging.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see that. And Florida's, not alone. You guys got really good people and other processes down there. But, in some places, the LRS is more mature than others. Some places it's not. Some still use a segmental system that's technically an LRS, where they got segments, and then they have a beginning and ending, and then they have rules why they break it. I don't consider that an LRS. That's a segmental system. And
It's crazy because there's resistance to do something better because there's fear that all of a sudden it'll report different mileage.
that's why you need an authoritative center line with authoritative linear referencing methods that are consistent across the board. And I remember when working with Florida, they wanted to start and stop their LRSs at the county border, so they could do the new one was going to do new mile pointing from the county border, where most states.
But they don't know where it is. They sometimes take where the pavement changes, so will they overlap or,
Yeah, and that's
never a same place.
right. That's a business process thing, right? Yeah. Yep. So, all right. Yes, question.
Just in reference to what he's sharing, sometimes there's different purposes for these LRSs, and there might be multiple LRSs that you're, aligning to. If you're doing like a CAD alignment, that could be very exact. If you're doing like something that you're just doing traffic accident reconstruction, or
Yep.
then you're using maybe some less resolute,
Right.
accuracy. So, it depends on what they're needing at the line. I think there's different purposes.
So I'm going to argue that a little bit, if you don't mind. Okay. There should only be one true linear reference center line in the department. And you talk about accuracy. So I'll give you the Iowa story real quick. So back in '06, we had a plus or minus 3 meters on the center line, right? That's not good enough, because that's why the GIS, the survey people, get it surveyed, right? Well, the whole point was we didn't have the resources to get down all the way down where it needed to be. So we created a policy and procedure in place. As the CAD project was let, the road inventory folks would take that center line out of CAD, and it would replace the center line that's out there. Now, granted, it's going to take 50 years or 40 years to upgrade the entire center line system to get where you're talking about, but those are some of the concessions you make. That's why the fabric, you kind of look at where you can have momentum, what's worth it to you as an organization, what's not worth it to you. For us, it was okay to do that because it was a reference. It didn't need to be exact in most cases. Yeah.
So as a follow-up to what you're sharing, we can argue the counterpoint. Granted, the alignment, is the true center line alignment, or
Mhm.
the true reference line is the correct LRM.
Yep.
However, you're living with some old stuff that you're transitioning to. That's a secondary one. These may have been digitized. That's a third one.
Yep.
You may use travel demand modeling, and that's another one that has a whole different network. That's why it's so good to have like something like as we roads and highways that you can, link or you can align these, or you put those together.
Right, exactly. And that's a piece of software that I think 40 states or 38 states are using now to manage their stuff. At Iowa, we had a custom one, and it was just getting too expensive to run a custom one, so we flopped to roads and highways. We already had our data in a good way, and we had APIs and everything, so all we had to do was rechange how things were. So appreciate what you're saying. So, all right, any other questions? I thought I was going to go, oh, yeah.
So I want to hear your thoughts on maybe something that I'm going to ask contradicts itself. So one is data versioning. I think is going to become very, very important in terms of how we can reconstitute all these assets in point in time for many reasons. And simultaneously, that means there's more data, but with data there's a cost. There's actually a physical cost
Yep.
on society and things like that.
Yep.
I don't think anybody's talking about the cost of data yet.
No, they're not.
So, like, while, yeah, we save paper, that's great, but there is a significant cost at the level of survival of our species too. The reason I say that is because it is growing exponentially. So, while we seem to produce data for the sake of data rather than data for information, how do these things fit in your data fabric? On one hand, I'm saying we need versioning, and on the other hand, I'm saying it's cost.
I think as humans, our natural thing is going to be, do we need to keep the versions? Or do we just need to know what's in the now? Like Spaceballs, the movie, right? When they go back and forth. Everyone's, I don't know if people get that one. Okay. But do you keep the now, or do you need to go back in time on why you made a decision, right? Like, let's say a bridge gets taken out and something's been realigned and some payments taken out. Do you need to know that 30 years from now?
That's a great question and discussion for the industry, right?
Yeah.
What levels of version are necessary? Some
Yeah.
may be, some
Yeah.
may not be.
Some,
Like,
yeah.
what's the point of maybe at the letting out of a project in the contracting stuff?
Right.
And
Right.
required then it's version.
And as you've probably seen with the fabric, we're at a 100,000-foot view, but you can go to that data fabric or the data standards one, and you can probably have weeks worth of sessions on best practices, what's going to work for you, but then you become analysis paralysis of data governance, right? You can't get anything done because you've gotten too deep in the weeds, and all of a sudden you've hired people and nothing's getting done. When it comes to data, one thing we did at Iowa that I thought was genius was on the data governance side, we hired a librarian. Librarians are natural with data. And so it was one of the best things we ever did, because they helped us with metadata standards, they helped us with all that stuff. Yeah, and unfortunately the person left after about 5 years and went to the feds to be a librarian for the US DOT to deal with data. But we kind of kept that spirit going, and we brought the library science group at Iowa State to come along, or University of Iowa, I think it was, to come along and help us on a part-time basis with that. So librarians are actually really good at dealing with your governance, and if you can guide through it, they can help you with that standard, with how you should document it, and then they're also good with enforcement of that. You ever been to a library and they yell at you because you're like, right? You knew where I was going back there before I even went. It's like, wait a second. So, yeah, so librarians are really a good asset to have for your governance side and keep things in check, because they naturally like that. So, all right, what else do we have here? Anyone else? You want to go? I don't think there's treats out there yet. But you do have a playbook, which is kind of like a treat. So. Oh, yeah. Here you go. A whole stack? No. Oh, no, they're behind you. I was just giving you a hard time, like, you just want to take these out? Now, if I see any of these in the trash, I know everybody in here, and I know that. All right, well, I really appreciate your time. If you got questions, please reach out to me, because I really love to answer any questions you have or brainstorm some things. And I'm also here till Thursday. All right, bye. Oh, thank you.
And I asked for those before, but you just said,
Oh, you can take as many.
teaser to watch the presentation.
I'd be happy to. I've done this presentation for Kansas. So if you have students.
I'm with MnDOT, and I'm the librarian that they hired to work with data.
Look at
So I
that.
was wondering who you were talking about.
Oh, it was